Do I think Jeff gained muscle? Yes. He's also measuring lean mass, which isn't the same thing as muscle. The posing is exaggerated in the after.
I'm here with Dr. Mike Israetel, and today we're taking a scientific look at YouTube's biggest fitness influencers. From wild transformation claims to questionable training advice, we'll break down what's solid and what's complete nonsense. No hate, just science. Enjoy. First, Jeff Nippard. We look at his recent one-year transformation and whether the numbers add up.
So, from the beginning of the experiment to the end of the experiment, at the exact same body weight, I gained 2.7 pounds of lean mass. That may not sound like much to some of you, but think about it. This is what the lean mass I added would look like if it were ribeye steaks. So that's basically like putting on almost 4 huge steaks worth of tissue in 1 year. And at just under 5'5", adding that much tissue across my body is gonna make a visual difference. I definitely see the biggest difference in my chest and my back, but I see some gains in my shoulders and hamstrings too. Now, if you remember, the reason I cut down is because I really wanted to see how much muscle I'd retain from my bulk. So at the end of my bulk, I was up 4.5 pounds of lean mass, and now I'm still up 2.7 pounds of lean mass. So yes, I did retain most of those gains while cutting down. I kept more than half the lean mass that I put on, which I think is pretty solid. I'm also leaner now. I started the experiment at 15.8% body fat, and now I'm down to 14.5% body fat. So not only did I shred all the 11 pounds of fat that I put on during the bulk, I also lost another 2 pounds of fat beyond that. The ultrasound results also showed that I gained net muscle in my biceps even after the cut. My quads also grew significantly during the bulk, but basically came back down to baseline after the cut. I'm gonna blame that on my knee injury, especially my left quad, which did lose more muscle, and that's the knee that I injured. I did hold on to some net muscle gain on my right quad though, even after the cut. Also, for the sake of scientific transparency, we also took BIA, or bioelectrical impedance measurements, throughout the study. This is the type of device you'll often see in commercial gyms. It says that I lost 1 pound of lean mass. This probably would have gutted me if I didn't have access to higher quality, more expensive, and more sensitive equipment. BIA has about twice the error margin of a DEXA machine, and I honestly just think my gains were well within the error bars for that device. Plus, the DEXA results, the ultrasound results, the strength results, and the before and after photos all quite clearly show that I made gains. So I say this just to say that you shouldn't feel bad if you get a BIA test done and the results aren't what you expected. They're often not sensitive enough to detect real changes in muscle mass in experienced lifters. So the question we all want to know, am I going to use steroids? No. I think I proved to myself that I can still make gains, even 15 years deep, if I really commit. I don't have any regrets about the training program, but if I had my time back, I think I would have bulked a little less aggressively.
I have 2 thoughts about it. One thought is that because he combined DEXA measurements, visual analysis, and strength measurements, it's a pretty robust way of demonstrating that muscle was very likely gained. So that's really cool. On the opposite end is that every one of those is within the margin of error, even though all 3 point in the right direction. Technically, the BIA didn't point in the right direction, though BIA is kind of a garbage measurement anyway. So, you know, and obviously, like, your full transparency, the posing is exaggerated in the after, classic before and after, which is not a bad thing. It's just a real thing. Do I think Jeff gained muscle? Yes. He's also measuring lean mass, which isn't the same thing as muscle. Probably, I assume he probably lost almost no muscle during his cut. He lost lean mass as a result of losing fat mass. It is very nice that he was able to demonstrate a comparable body fat at the end with a retention of lean mass. That's cool. But just that by itself is almost worthless because the DEXA doesn't discriminate at levels that fine-tunedly for one individual with so few measurements. If you were to get a DEXA once a week, which I don't recommend, that's quite a bit of radiation, though technically safe, but just the bare minimum of safe, then you could demonstrate like a series analysis, statistical effect of things happening very robustly for one individual. There are actually distinct methods of statistics and sports science that can address that. But like a measurement before and a measurement after doesn't tell us a whole lot. The range of error for one individual taking one measurement at a time, especially a year apart, is like, that's pretty high. So I think it's dope I think if his repetition strength increased on exercises, which I believe it did, it's probably an even better measurement in that regard than the DEXA, because your precision on how strong you are after you're very advanced is actually very high. You don't accidentally add 2 reps to your bench. It just doesn't happen. You add a quarter rep to your bench, but if you added 3 reps and 10 pounds, you are for sure more muscular, because you don't make long-term neurological adaptations if you have lifts in the entire time. So I think Jeff almost certainly gained muscle. I think it's a really awesome proof of concept that someone who's trained pretty hard for a long time in their 30s can still gain muscle if they kind of knuckle down and do it. I find his statement on steroids as both interesting and valid. The valid part is, like, if it's convincing enough for you that you could still make gains without steroids later in your years, then you only want to do steroids because you wanted to make gains at all and not just plateau, then it's a good reason not to use steroids. As a matter of fact, Eric Helms, I believe, is 42 years old. And I know, like, pretty much objectively, he's the biggest he's ever been. And he's been training ever since, like, he's training for 20 years or something like that. So it is definitely possible to do. That being, you know, obviously there's the Godfather from 3DMJ. I mean, he's like been making gains since he was 10 and he's like 65 or some shit. I'm kidding, but it's not that far off. On the other hand, you know, almost nobody uses steroids because they couldn't make natural gains anymore. Their natural gains fall to a level where they're like, you know, I want to climb higher in total, and these natural gains just won't get me to where I want to go. So I think from that perspective, you know, that there could be a different logic applied to whether or not to use steroids. But I love Jeff's transparency. I love the fact that he tracked his whole journey. I just want folks listening to understand that, like, if you go and get a DEXA and it shows that you did gain any muscle or whatever, the only reason to do a DEXA, in my opinion, is to get a measurement of like roughly where you are, and then maybe years later get another one just for vibes. Another thing is, like, if you want to assign yourself a protein amount to eat, and you're like, okay, so I need to know how much lean body mass I have, within plus or minus 5 pounds is what you need. A DEXA will for sure give you that. BIA will give you, generally, like, the research on multiple people at the same time series is good with BIA. It's good, it's not great. In practical applications, I've never seen the BIA be useful a single time, and its probability of giving you really erroneous estimates is so insane that it just wouldn't even bother with it. So DEXA is a good thing to be like how much protein do you need to eat? Am I 25% body fat, or am I 20% body fat? The DEXA will point you in the right direction on that for sure. More than that, I've had a bunch of DEXAs done. I'm getting one in a few days just for vibes. It really is just for vibes, because it's unfortunately not as precise as people want, including myself, to believe that it is. What do you think?
Yeah, so I agree with most of what you said for sure. There's a lot of things I like about the video, whether it's the fact that he took multiple measures like muscle thickness measurements by ultrasound, DEXA, even strength in the gym, and kind of triangulated those to determine whether or not polyps occurred is great. With that being said, the lighting and even the body hair was different in the pre and post, which at that level of change, you know, we're talking 2 pounds in a year, can actually make a substantial difference in how visually it looks, for example.
Oh yeah.
Like it can make you look several % leaner than you really are, for sure.
And bigger.
Yep,
His
exactly.
back looked freaky.
Yes, but that was mostly posing.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
Like 2 pounds of muscle will not make that big of a difference.
No.
Posing though.
Yes.
I also think that taking several pre and post measurements and then averaging those, like several DEXA measurements in that post measurement, does lead to better outcomes, and that's like more accurate estimates of how much fat mass we have. We've done that in studies. I think that would be a great way to improve this. But overall, I like that he took a more data-driven approach to determining whether an advanced lifter can still see gains.
Yes. It also doesn't prove that anyone else can do this.
Oh, yes.
There's people watch it and they go, oh, like, it means I can gain as an advanced. Maybe, probably, but maybe not.
It's a case study.
Yep.
N=1 doesn't really mean anything for anyone else.
Yep.
Next, we react to Will Tennyson's physique on stage, fresh off earning a pro card. We took a look at his progress and what it means. There's a couple of shots, there's a few more. There's not much out there, surprisingly.
Yeah.
There's this, and there's these comparison shots specifically.
Let me see his the past shot, or the first one you showed.
So he turned pro at this show.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
mean,
first time.
His balance, symmetry, proportionality is phenomenal. His posing is excellent. His conditioning is very good. It's difficult to talk about conditioning in a way that doesn't result in everyone saying, well, you could always be leaner.
Yep.
So does he have like a lot of leg detail? No. Does he have a lot of glute detail? Plenty. Not a ton, but plenty. Is his back absolutely out of this world? Yes. It's incredible. And I think that also he just like, it's so for lack of a better term, cringy. I hate that term, but it's such a perilous task to critique someone's stage photos because it's that whole man in the arena speech. Like, I'm not on stage right now. And like, anyone who goes on stage is infinite mad respect, especially if you're an influencer, because everyone comes out of the woodwork to criticize you, and the vast majority of these people will never go on stage. So like, Will Tennyson looks like a fucking god. And can his legs be significantly sharper? Can he be leaner overall in his next show, should he choose to do it? Yes, absolutely. There's room for improvement, but I think he looks phenomenal. 9.5 out of 10. The other thing is, he got his pro card, natural pro, which is amazing. And I have absolutely no reason to believe he's on drugs. It's almost certainly true that he's drug free, which is like awesome. In real life, he's really, really big. And the other thing is like, he doesn't compete at bodybuilding. This is like maybe his first show or second or so. This is like their first show. To turn pro on your first show and get any kind of criticism is ridiculous. Like if you're a judge, a show judge, and you talk to a guy in his 20s who just did his first show, like the guy's like, hey, what criticisms do you have? It's just, you only ever say one thing. You're like, just keep getting bigger over time, nice and easy, a little leaner next time, next show. It's the same criticism for everyone. So it's one of those things where like, if Will Tennyson was a seasoned bodybuilder, he'd get very advanced critiques, but he's not. And so it's just fucking awesome. You know?
No, for sure. He has a lot of size. His quads are a super strong point, big back. Conditioning-wise,
His legs is what wins shows.
yeah, for sure. Conditioning-wise, for a first-timer, solid.
Solid.
Like, absolutely solid, and I'm not surprised that at that show, he did come out to be a pro. Yeah, size-wise, he was bigger than basically everyone there.
Yeah.
Conditioning-wise, also had the meat. For the future, I think the biggest improvement he could see in terms of performance, like being natural, not having potentially that much muscle left to put on,
Sure.
will just be getting leaner. And
Yeah, I thought you were going to say take drugs.
oh, that would help. But mostly like for men especially, but also for women to an extent, the back, glutes, and hamstrings are typically the last things to come in, and you can very much see that here.
His back is in big time.
Its back is in big time, but lower back is also in. But for some people, the hamstrings and glutes and lower back area take the last.
He would make a really hot girl because he's probably got good fat ass genetics.
That's true. But yeah, if those came in, it's a really compelling package, even for a
Very compelling package for a not natty pro. Like if he gets his legs and glutes shredded, like damn, that's the serious physique.
He's got some size and posing is solid as well. So overall, happy to see it.
Excellent.
Next, Jesse James West tried to pick only 10 exercises for the rest of his life.
If you had only 10 exercises for the rest of your life, what would it be? You gotta hit everything.
Oh God! All right, Bulgarian split squat. That's gonna do quads and glutes. Lying leg curl. Hamstrings are done. Rear delt fly. Seated dumbbell press. That's 4. Underhand grip pull-ups. Flat barbell bench press. 6. Overhead dumbbell tricep extension. 7. Dumbbell curl. Hanging leg raises. Ab standing calf raise. Done. 10.
What are your thoughts?
The interviewer is one of the most European persons I've ever heard. So if you are on the Autobahn and you have your Audi and you're putting it into fifth gear and you have a cigarette in your mouth.
Audi's the getaway car.
Yes.
Yes.
And we're getting away from this just toxic culture and fitness.
With €1 million.
€1 million to spend on anything I want except for a flat in London, which costs $2 million minimum. Yeah, man. That was cool. I wish people screamed at me in interviews during expos more. Those are all solid exercises, man. You know, here's what I'll say. We need content, don't we? What 10 exercises do you really like is a question that has top to bottom cogency. You can't critique it. But you and I are about to unsheath our sports science PhD swords, because the idea that any exercise is one you're going to use for the rest of your life is insane. You're in a gymnasium, sir. There are other exercises. As a matter of fact, if you say, well, if you have only dumbbells, like, yes, there are like 10 dumbbell exercises for each muscle group you can do that aren't these. Variation is a thing. And variation occurs for physiological reasons, joint connective tissue wear, exact motor unit activation patterns, and it also occurs for psychological reasons. Like at some point, you're just done doing dumbbell curls. You're just fucking done. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else. And so I struggle. I think it's a really great social media thing, and I think it greatly helps people come up with exercise ideas. Like people watching this who don't know a whole lot might be like, oh, overhead dumbbell extension. That's really cool. That's awesome. That's a great use. What I just want to warn people against is thinking like, was these exercises specifically that are not only better than the others, because they're top 10, top 5, but it's different for everyone and there's a huge list. And also, I don't want people to think like, I need to pick exercises that I just need to stick to
For the rest of his life.
for years. Don't do that. A couple months at a time, switch to something else. Variety is the spice of life. It's like asking a bodybuilder, hey man, best protein source, egg whites or steak? Get that camera the fuck out of my face.
To be clear, none of this has anything to do with Jesse James West. He was answering a question being
I've done this on Chris Williams' podcast.
And I think it's an interesting thought experiment in the sense that you're essentially asked, okay, on average, what do you think is the best exercise covering the whole body if you had to pick 10, right? And I think he made a good selection overall.
It's fine. Selection.
The one thing that stood out to me the most was no rows. So like underhand grip pull-ups will train your lats, your biceps pretty well. But as far as your lower mid traps, as far as your rhomboids, as far as some of the smaller muscles in your upper back,
spinal erectors,
exactly, those might be missing. Also a bit of a hate on the lying leg curl, because leg curl is probably better for most people.
I guess the other hate I can do is hanging leg raise is the opposite of a good force curve. We can hate on the individual exercises all we want. It's just I think that if we don't caveat it, we did, of like, well, Jesse, there is a list of 10 exercises you should be doing. Jesse just picked the wrong ones. That's not the critique. These are fine exercises. And you know, the other thing is, it actually is interesting because if you analyze the question very deeply, you're actually going to give slightly different answers than just what the best exercises are for each muscle group, because you're going to get into a few different considerations. This is like, I love this next level shit. Ready? If you really want to answer this question to a high degree of fidelity, really for the rest of my life, like, okay, sweet. So I have to pick exercises that I know have a very low probability of being injurious or irritative to connective tissues. That eliminates a lot of really good exercises. Another one is I have to pick exercises that probably hit more muscle groups than just the ones they target, so that I can actually have some crossover effects. So if I'm only allowed one exercise, a lot of exercises better do a lot of shit. I'm doing close grip everything. Close grip presses, close grip pulls. I'm not going to try to do a lot of isolation work, like for example, triceps. I would pick something like a JM press, because it gives me more chest volume and more chest variation. And then I would pick some kind of incline press for chest above that. And you'd be like, okay, why did you pick the jam press and the incline press? Well, the incline press hits upper chest and mostly chest, but the jam press hits mostly triceps, but a little chest, and it's at a decline. So you start to think these second order effects. And then at the end of the day, you've actually constructed a program as asked, specifically for, okay, you have to just do 10 exercises. Which ones would you use for the rest of your life? That gives you an answer. Like if you gave an AI this question and you incentivized it in various ways, it would give you the correct answer, but you'd be like, that's kind of a wacky choice. It'd be like, no, trust me, I thought it through. And then you're like, why these exercises? What about XYZ? And it goes, well, you know, these won't be optimal for the next 10 years. And you're like, right. And then you come back to like, oh, that's a fucking stupid question. All vibes, all jokes or whatever. But like, I don't know exactly what people want from that question every single time. It's clearly not the optimality game theoretic problem we just answered. It's not that, right? I think they just want like vibes and like, give me 10 good exercises. I wish like the question was, hey, give me some of your favorite 10 exercises for each muscle group, or one for each muscle group that like, that you're really fucking with today. Like what's on your mind right now? That I want to hear. Like, I don't want to hear Chris Bumstead's best 10. I want to hear like, what's Chris doing right now to kind of like things he's like really into. That is a really, I think, a better question.
We also looked at Larry Wheel's physique updates during his latest bodybuilding prep and whether we think he's on track for a show. With Wesley Vissers.
Oh.
Do a front lat spread as well? Yeah.
He has a smaller waist from the front than Wesley Vissers.
Agreed, right? Yes. And then side chest. Okay. Let me step over here in line. Yeah, but there should always be like a proper line. What I noticed, I don't know if you noticed it as well, during the meet and greet at the FIBO, people, they start to try to out-angle you. I'm like, you're going on a picture with us. Do you want to look bigger than us? Why do you want that so badly? I mean, don't you want to see the athlete itself? But
I never understood that.
yeah. Back of the bicep. Okay. Now we have the benefit of seeing the back. Oh, yes. There's always something missing when you practice posing. You don't have a posing room. That's so nice you can see your own back. Oh, I love that.
Cool. I think that gives you a pretty good idea of the physique at the moment. What are your thoughts on it?
What do you think about it? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think first of all, he looks a lot better than during his first prep, which, like in terms of his size, upper body wise, his lats, his arms, being hypercritical. I think the condition for 5 weeks out might not be fully there yet. Like it might be slightly lying behind. And now we're comparing it to goddamn Wesley Vissers, who's a very, very good bodybuilder.
You could say that.
Yes. So, but the quads and the back width specifically kind of stand out as being potentially some of the weaker points, but some of the other muscles have come up a lot, like the arms, the shoulders, the chest. He's always had a good chest, but even more so now. But yeah, it's interesting to see the physique of someone who's insanely strong and seeing how that then translates to a physique endeavor.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the answer is it generally transfers, but not like a ton. Like if you told two people who didn't know anything who's stronger, they would point to Wesley, which would be off by like a factor of 2 or something. It's like any time, you know, Larry would go over 600 pounds in a squat, Wesley would be like, I'm sorry, I'm not here for this. But, you know, 2 things stand out, 3 things. One is that Larry looks really, really good.
Yeah, I agree.
Another one is that he has the classic trouble getting his hamstring to pop out in side poses. You're supposed to slide your whole leg against the other leg and turn your knee away from the stage to get the hamstring to pop out. Wesley clearly knows what he's doing. He's just one of the best posers, period. And the other thing I would say is like, Larry is out of this world jacked.
Yes.
And then you stand next to one of the best pros today and you're like, oh shit, there's levels to this. Pictures never do any pro justice. And there's a very difference. Like if you're watching this, you've never seen a really good pro in real life, like pretty lean and in the gym, there's something you're missing that you'll never amount to. And I've seen a lot of pros lean in the gym, mostly in locker rooms, mostly when I'm on my knees. And it was really just baffling. You're like, sometimes you have these hopes and dreams that you're gonna be like pretty good. And then you see like Derek Lunsford 3 weeks out and you're like, why do I bother going to the gym? It's really insane. So Wesley's like, I mean, look, Larry's like looking amazing and he's gonna do great. But like, it's just inspirational to see someone like Wesley and be like, why is your back like, there's wide and then there's like, you have extra shit going on that doesn't make any sense.
The crazy thing as well is that Larry's one of the strongest people of all time.
Yep.
And someone in classic physique, which has weight caps,
Yep.
is on par with him size-wise.
Yep.
So size is not always perfectly
No.
the same as strength.
Correct.
Then we checked out Athlean-X, an OG YouTuber with a video titled 5 Exercises That Fix 95% of Your Problems.
While you're fixing these areas of dysfunction, you also don't want to turn a blind eye towards maintaining strength and upper body strength. And if there's an exercise that you can do that would fix a lot of the dysfunction but also help you to continue to build your strength, then that's the one you want to do. And for me, it's a push-up variation and it's called the dive bomber push-up. Now there's 2 versions. This is the more advanced version, but I'll show you how to do this if you're not as strong. The idea is you're gonna start from this downward dog position, right? And this is gonna help to improve the flexibility of our lower body because by keeping our knees straight, we're gonna feel a good stretch through the hamstrings here, down through the calves, okay? And at this point, I'm also gonna feel some additional mobility and flexibility work through the shoulders because I'm in this flex position. And by driving my head down, I'm actually just allowing my arms to flex even more up over my head. So I get more of that thoracic extension we were talking about and all those benefits throughout the spine. But now for the exercise itself, I can slowly lower myself down to the ground, scrape my chest down, and then come up on the other side. I'm actually shifting the focus of the one push-up to 3 different areas. Right here, I'm really working on the triceps and a little bit of the shoulders too, but mostly the triceps. I lower myself back down. This is gonna be mostly chest through here. And as I push myself back and away, I'm working more of the strength of the shoulders. What I want you to visualize is having like an imaginary fence right here. And I wanna slide under the fence and push up on the other side of it. So again, if I'm up here, I'm gonna slide down, get under that fence, come up on the other side, work the triceps, come back down, get the head clear under the fence, slide back through, and push. Now, if I couldn't do that, the only thing I'd have to forego is that hamstring stretching component, but I would just simply do this from an on knees position where I dive down and through and press up. And again, even here, I'm getting good mobility through my middle back and also my low back. So anyone that's dealing with any disc issues in their low back, we know that getting into an extended spine is a healthier position. So I can work on them in this sort of push-up or press-up variation. The idea here is to do these exercises until your point of failure, ensuring that you're pushing yourself hard enough to actually build strength
and muscle, that number is really irrelevant as long as you're pushing yourself and you continue to actually try to increase that number from session to session, then you know you're doing the right thing.
Mike, what are your thoughts on that exercise fixing 95% of your problems?
Yeah. So I like that his emphasis was on like a nice full range of motion exercise. It definitely hits the shoulders, triceps, and chest a lot. Not exactly the way you describe it, somewhat. And it requires a little bit of athletic coordination, which is really cool. It does involve a little bit of trunk movement. And it's a fine exercise to do with your friends. And I like that he had an emphasis on progressive overload and matching your own abilities and exceeding them slightly, not some kind of standard. But there is not a whole lot to say about the claim that it fixes 95% of dysfunction for two reasons. One of them is like logically preeminent and cancels out the second one altogether. There is no cataloged definition of what a body dysfunction is outside of distinct clinical diagnoses. I don't know what the fuck dysfunction means. You show me a person that dysfunctional person? I have no idea. Good news, nobody has any idea. It's a make-believe term. Dysfunction is when one of your legs is 3 inches shorter and the doctors give you a fucking special shoe to walk in. That's dysfunction. It's clinically relevant and it's very specific. Yeah. And a claim that something can fix 95% of all dysfunctions would need to have a catalog of all dysfunctions.
Well, dysfunctions, problems.
Problems is broad. Anything. And no such catalog exists as far as I know. So if you asked him to go point by point at which dysfunctions exist, let's get close to 95% of them and demonstrate how this exercise addresses them. Then it addresses almost no lower body anything. It addresses no pulling anything. So say if dysfunctions are generally pushing, pulling, and lower body related, maybe by some thirds or something, we're already off to a really bad start. But so I would say there's also no mechanism by which these address dysfunctions, but that's already so that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is we would claim like that. You would is an interesting proposal, a hypothesis, but if it's stated strongly more as a definitive idea, we would like to see some evidence of that. Even just a few studies to address this, they don't exist. And so because we're addressing a claim that is nonsensically couched, we don't even have to get to the empirical evidence. If someone's claims to have a Gorgazork in their basement, you don't have to have an FBI team come look for it. There's no such thing as a Gorgazork. As soon as you can demonstrate there is, we'll come look for it. So because there's no such thing as generalized dysfunction, then there's no reason to suspect that 95% of it can be fixed by that claimed exercise.
Yep. On the one hand, I want to be all, yep, you know what? He's promoting movement. Yeah. It would be just generally good for injury prevention, injury rehabilitation, all that stuff. On the other hand, the movement he is showing is kind of simultaneously meh for a lot of things. It's not really a dedicated stretch. Like, you're not really going to gain...
there's no stretch going on. The hamstring calf thing was just skipping for politeness.
There's not really a good stimulus for strength and hypertrophy either if you're anything but completely untrained.
Maybe that's his target demographic. Let's cut him that one.
Maybe it is, but, going back to the empirical evidence thing, I strongly doubt there's any evidence that doing this will be any better for you in terms of dysfunctions, quote unquote, than just doing movement.
Yeah.
You're just training in the gym.
I will say we can actually give some advice together on this. Doing compound, well-controlled, very deeply stretched movements in the gym, challenging yourself in them over time, 4 repetitions, getting stronger over time, deep squats, deep lunges, deep push-ups, deep presses, deep rows, full pull-ups and pull-downs, literally grows all the muscles of your body, makes you strong all over, addresses all of the joints, and gives you by definition high mobility because you have huge flexibility and strength through that range of motion.
His research on this is well confirming that lifting weights makes you more flexible.
This is actually the thing, right? So especially if you target extreme ranges of motion and potentially sink into deep ranges and hold that pause for 2 or 3 seconds, you're getting massive benefits for exactly what he's claiming, but you don't have to think of just one exercise. It's all of the exercises that you're going to do in a gym. They're all great for this kind of stuff. One of the things that folks like you and I fight against is dogmatism and trying to oversimplify a complex problem set. So the problem set of we need to have exercises that kind of prevent dysfunction, whatever the fuck that means, just make you healthier overall and more mobile and apt and less likely to get injured. That problem, the solution set for that is generally compound and isolation, full range of motion, challenging exercises pushed to your level of progression. That's actually the answer to that question, but that's the whole answer. And if you try to boil that answer down, what is that quote? Make everything as simple as you can, but no simpler. This is an example of simpler. Wait, one fucking exercise to do all this? so this is kind of grinds my gears a little bit because, you know, I'll be like on a plane sitting next to someone and they'll be like, so your exercise, blah, blah. Yes, you know, you've seen that. You've had that interaction before. And they're like, so what do you think of like planche push-ups or whatever the fuck that was? Like, that's good, right? And I'll be like, yeah. And I know where they're going, but I don't want to know where they're going. I already know where they're going. Like, you think there's one extra, imagine, this is a stupid analogy offhand, this will be funny. Imagine talking to someone who is like expert in the Kama Sutra or whatever the fuck, like real like sex expert, like positions, this and that. Imagine being like, so doggy style, like that's the best, right? They'd be like, there's no like, Jesus, there's not an answer to that question. Who told you that? No, Jeff Cavalier did. Like, oh, he does hate up good doggy style.
Citation question mark. That's it.
This is the most adaptable science-based fitness app. It designs your ideal workout based on your experience, schedule, health, and equipment. Whether you're a pro or just getting started, it adapts to you over time, so you can train effectively and always make progress. No two workouts are quite the same. Powered by advanced algorithms, constantly updated in collaboration with world-class experts, MyoAdapt is your personal fitness expert, but at a fraction of the cost.
Finally, Ryan Humiston on bicep training with a video titled "You're Training Biceps Wrong," backed by science.
Today we're using an EMG machine to test different bicep exercises. Why is that important? Why should you even care? Well, have you ever done a cross-body hammer curl? Most people do these for the brachialis. Turns out, it's actually a horrible exercise for the brachialis. Partially because every time I do them, I end up running into my overly developed chest, but also because when I tested it with the EMG machine, I ended up getting more activation of the long head and short head. We're gonna go over all the exercises you've been basically wasting your time with, and it will blow your mind. It seemed like everything I thought I knew once I tested it turned out to be a lie. For example, it's common knowledge that incline curl hits more long head because you're putting it in a stretch position. The fact that it crosses over shoulder, elbow joint, short head brachialis only cross over the elbow joint. It makes sense. That is not what happened. It's the fucking worst. Turns out it's a battle between your brachialis and your short head to see which one can generate the most force. Really? What the fuck? My first thought is there's no way this machine's accurate. I can't be the first douchebag to spend his money on a machine like this with a superficial goal of hypertrophy and test this and figure this out. Something's wrong. Because otherwise my entire training career has been a fucking lie. Seriously, Google how to train a long head. One of the first results is always an incline dumbbell curl. And I tested it. I tested every single angle you could use on the bench. I tested the cable variation. I even had an overly muscular woman come in and verify my results. And it sucks. And this racked my brain. It doesn't make sense. It should work. You're putting that bicep in a stretch position, long head. It wasn't until I found this case study that I finally understood how dumb we all are. It has been done before, and they found the same exact thing. The reason they said the incline dumbbell curl was poor in terms of long head activation is because it stretches it beyond the optimal length, leading to inefficient actin-myosin coupling.
All right, Mike, your thoughts?
I love the humor. It's the first time I've ever heard Ryan Humiston speak, other than wacky thumbnails that I've stared at lonely hours into the night. Comedy, self-awareness, 10 out of 10. 2 detractions, respectfully. 1, a sample size of 1 means almost nothing. 2, a sample size of 1 on a piece of machinery like the EMG, surface not fine wire EMG, probably without properly prepped abraded sites, is almost worthless, if not totally worthless. That machine can't discriminate between the parts of a muscle. You'd be surprised if it discriminates between muscle and any other kind of activity electrically that goes on in the area. Also, has that machine particularly been validated? I'm not sure. So what you need to make sense of EMG at its best is dozens of participants and trying different variations of exercises, and then you can see if you can pick up patterns. And even then, EMG suffers like 8 different limitations, which I actually have a video about to go through every single one. So it really is like, you think you're learning things, but you're actually learning almost nothing. And so if someone says like, oh, it turns out the long head, blah, 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 I got blah, 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 through EMG, I'm just like in one ear out the other, I don't give a fuck. The way you really assess if this is going on with EMG is 1, you do fine wire EMG, which no one signs up for because they poke a fucking wire in your muscle. That actually tells you quite a bit, though still limited in some capacity. Electrical activity does not necessarily correlate very well with force production, it turns out, as there's passive structures and all this other stuff, eccentric load. The EMG is actually biased to detect more contraction than it is to detect eccentric, even though eccentric is at least as hypertrophic. EMG is biased towards short lengths and biased away from long lengths, which is already bad. So, long lengths actually grow more muscle. And so what EMG tells you is good is probably very close to the opposite of what's good. I can keep going, but TLDR, EMG is a gigantic fucking waste of time. And if you want to learn regional hypertrophy differences, you have to have multiple participants in multiple studies with a very well-trained, very properly vetted and validated ultrasound device. And then you can start to look at regional stuff and make a lot of sense of it, which you do have that data, and that's the best data in the world.
Yeah, I've got multiple thoughts, mostly along the same lines. One, there's literally a review paper called EMG is not a valid proxy for hypertrophy. And that's from like 2 years ago. Yeah. EMG is not a valid proxy for hypertrophy. Just because an exercise displays high EMG readings does not mean it will necessarily cause more hypertrophy over the long term. Yep. And this is really well established in research, really widely accepted. And yet, unfortunately, for the past 5 or so years, there's been several influencers who have used EMG as a means to pick one exercise or the other. And I think as far as your hierarchy of evidence goes, of what should you use to determine which exercise to pick in the gym, EMG is right at the fucking bottom. Yeah. It's next to useless, genuinely. So there's also multiple limitations in practice, like you need to be actually trained to use EMG where it comes to the exact electrode placement. As soon as you introduce movement, they start sliding around sometimes. That causes issues as well. A minor difference in how they're positioned between different exercises can cause issues. Like,
did you shave and abrade the area?
Exactly. There's a ton of things that can go wrong. Yeah. There's also experimental evidence of EMG not predicting hypertrophy. For instance, we have a study of Plotkin and colleagues where they compared the squats to the hip thrust, but before starting the study, where participants went away for 8 or 10 weeks and trained either the squat or the hip thrust, they also measured EMG of the glutes, hamstrings, quads during those exercises. And they wanted to see, okay, well, we have these readings, hip thrusts cause higher EMG readings in glutes, for example.
Even in those specific individuals.
Yes.
That's extra valid.
And does that then predict the hypertrophy patterns over the 8 to 10 weeks? And basically, no. Not in any way. Not within muscle, not across participants, not within participant. To any level of analysis, didn't pan out.
To support your point, these are large muscle volumes. Differentiating between different parts of the glute, you might as well not even fucking do, right? Because holy shit, what the bicep is teeny tiny, is 2 parts of it, they're mostly linked together, you don't even know what you're measuring at that point.
And the final thing is that we actually have empirical research on hypertrophy itself from different curl variations. So if you're using EMG research above actually measuring hypertrophy and claiming, no, look, we have research saying the incline curl might be better for bicep hypertrophy because you have more to stretch, when we actually measure bicep curls. But here's me in my gym measuring EMG and finding that EMG readings are lower in the biceps and therefore it's actually quote unquote a waste of time or useless. That's rough. Very rough. I just wouldn't use EMG as a means to predict hypertrophy or pick exercises, period.
Agreed.
Mike, that's it. Where can people find you and your channel?
I have no idea. Where am I right now? I'm
basement.
I'm like Joe Biden. Ooh, why am I not tied up yet? Hurry up now.
I got you.
RP Strength YouTube, and click on my giant ugly head. And when I need to find the latest scientific research and the nuanced take on it, I go to Dr. Pack and, of course, the always permanent Dr. Milo Wolf. Huge honor to be here.
See you next time. If you'd like me to coach you, consider taking a look at the link above to see what I offer.